Yesterday, I discovered my family told my 6-year-old daughter she'd be sent back to the orphanage. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. My name is Madison, and 2 years ago, I made the best decision of my life. I adopted Emma. She was 4 then, with these enormous brown eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. The social worker warned me about attachment issues, about the challenges of single motherhood, about how difficult it would be without family support. She wasn't wrong about that last part. I remember the day I first saw Emma's file. I was 32, working 60-hour weeks at my marketing firm, living in a studio apartment that barely fit my bed and a small couch. My parents had been asking when I'd settle down and give them real grandchildren for years. My sister Sarah, married with twin boys, never missed an opportunity to remind me that my biological clock was ticking. "You're being selfish, Madison," my mother had said during one particularly brutal Sunday dinner. "A child needs stability, a real family, not some career woman playing house." But when I held Emma for the first time, when she looked up at me and whispered, "Are you my new mommy?" everything else faded away. This tiny human had been through 3 foster homes in 2 years. She'd been returned twice because families decided she was too much work. The orphanage had become her safe space, the only constant in her chaotic little world. My family's reaction to the adoption was predictable. My father said I was making a mistake that would ruin my life. My mother worried about what people would think. Sarah was the cruelest of all. "You can't just buy a child because you're lonely, Madison," she'd sneered during the family meeting where I announced my decision. "That little girl needs real parents, not someone who's trying to fill a void in her pathetic life." I should have seen the warning signs then. The way they refused to childproof their house when Emma and I visited. How they never bought her Christmas presents, claiming they forgot she'd be there. The way my mother would introduce Emma to friends as Madison's project. Emma noticed everything. Children always do. She'd ask me in her small voice why Grandma and Grandpa didn't hug her like they hugged Cousin Jake and Cousin Tommy. Why Aunt Sarah would tell her boys to go play, but never included Emma. Why she always felt like she was invisible when we visited. "Mommy," she said one evening after a particularly awkward family barbecue, "do they not like me because I don't look like you?" My heart shattered. Emma was biracial. Her birth mother was African American. Her father was white. My family had made comments about her background and what that might mean for her future. I'd shut them down every time, but apparently not firmly enough. "Baby," I told her, pulling her onto my lap, "some people don't know how to love with their whole heart. But that's their problem, not yours. You are perfect exactly as you are, and you are mine forever." She'd smile then, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The fear that maybe, just maybe, I might change my mind too. The last straw came 6 months ago. Sarah was pregnant with her 3rd child and had been particularly vicious about my pretend family. During Emma's 6th birthday party, which I hosted because my family claimed they were too busy to help, Sarah pulled me aside. "You know this is all going to fall apart, right?" she said, watching Emma blow out her candles with pure joy. "You're not cut out for this. When reality hits and you realize you can't handle a damaged kid, don't come crying to us." Emma is not damaged, I said through gritted teeth, and I am her mother, period. Sarah laughed. You're playing house, Madison. That little girl will figure out eventually that you're not her real family. And when she does, she'll want her real parents. What are you going to do then? I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to throw her out of my house and never speak to her again. But Emma was watching and I couldn't ruin her special day. So I smiled and walked away, making a mental note to limit our family interactions even further. That decision probably saved Emma from even more trauma, but it couldn't protect her from what happened 3 weeks ago. I was driving home from work on a rainy Thursday evening when the semi-truck ran the red light. The last thing I remember was seeing those headlights coming straight toward my driver's side door and thinking, Emma? Who's going to take care of Emma? I woke up in the ICU 3 days later with a concussion, 2 broken ribs, and a shattered left leg. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. My first coherent thought was about my daughter. Where's Emma? I croaked to the nurse. Your family picked her up from school, she said kindly. They said they'd take care of everything while you recover. Relief flooded through me. Despite everything, they were still family. They'd step up when it mattered. Emma would be safe. I was so wrong. The first sign something was off came when Emma visited me on day 2. She was quieter than usual, clinging to my hand and refusing to make eye contact with my mother who had brought her. How are you doing at Grandma's house, baby? I asked. Emma shrugged. Okay, I guess. Just okay? She glanced at my mother nervously. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Aunt Sarah says I'm lucky they have space for me. My mother's face was stone. Emma's been adjusting. You know how children can be when their routine is disrupted. But something in Emma's eyes told me there was more to the story. She seemed smaller somehow, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. When visiting hours ended and my mother took her hand to leave, Emma looked back at me with an expression that haunts me still, like she wasn't sure she'd see me again. That night, unable to sleep despite the pain medication, I called my parents' house. My father answered. How's Emma doing? I asked. Fine, he said curtly. Sarah's handling most of it. You just focus on getting better. Can I talk to her? She's asleep. It's past 9, Madison. Something in his tone bothered me, but I was too groggy to process it fully. I hung up and tried to push down the growing unease in my chest. The second visit was worse. Emma had a bruise on her arm that my mother claimed came from roughhousing with the boys. But Emma flinched when anyone touched her, and she kept asking when she could come home. Soon, baby, I promised. As soon as Mommy's leg is better, we'll go home together. Promise, she whispered, and the desperation in her voice broke my heart. I promise. You're stuck with me forever, remember? She smiled then, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was on the 4th day that everything changed. I was dozing fitfully when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My hospital roommate, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, had been discharged that morning, and I'd given her my number in case she needed anything. The text was brief. Your family doesn't know I can hear them from the garden. That little girl needs you. Get well soon. Confused, I called Mrs. Chen's number. Hello, dear, she said. I hope you don't mind, but I heard something today that disturbed me greatly. What do you mean? I was tending to my roses this afternoon. My yard backs up to your parents' property. The windows were open, and I couldn't help but overhear a conversation. Your sister was there with your parents, and they were discussing your daughter. My blood ran cold. What did they say? Mrs. Chen hesitated. Perhaps it's not my place. Please, I need to know. Your sister was quite upset about something. She was saying that having the child there was disrupting her boy's routine, that it wasn't fair to expect them to accommodate her. Your mother agreed. They were discussing alternatives. What kind of alternatives? Your sister mentioned something about contacting social services, about how a single woman in the hospital couldn't properly care for an adopted child, about how it might be better if the little one went back to more suitable arrangements. The room started spinning. They want to send her back to the orphanage? I'm not sure of the details, dear, but that poor little girl was sitting right there on the porch. She heard every word. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Is she okay? She was crying, dear. Silently, but crying nonetheless. I wanted to go comfort her, but it wasn't my place. I just thought you should know. After I hung up, I lay in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My family was discussing sending Emma away while I was helpless to stop them. Emma, who had already been abandoned so many times, was hearing adults plan her next rejection. I tried calling the house, but no one answered. I called Sarah's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic was setting in, made worse by my inability to physically get to my daughter. That's when I made the call that would change everything. I dialed the number I'd memorized, but hoped I'd never need, the emergency contact for Emma's social worker. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Madison Fletcher. I need your help. Ms. Rodriguez arrived at the hospital within an hour, her face grim with concern. Carmen Rodriguez had been Emma's caseworker during the adoption process, and she'd become something of an ally over the past 2 years. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen too many children failed by the system and the adults who were supposed to protect them. Tell me everything, she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. I recounted Mrs. Chen's phone call, the strange behaviour during visits. Emma's obvious distress. Carmen's expression grew darker with each detail. Madison, I need to be honest with you, she said when I finished. Your sister called our office yesterday. My heart stopped. She what? She expressed concerns about Emma's welfare. Said you were in no condition to care for a child, that the family was struggling to manage her behaviour problems, and that perhaps it would be best if we considered alternative arrangements. Behaviour problems? I could barely speak through my rage. Emma doesn't have behaviour problems. She's scared and confused because she thinks she's going to be abandoned again. Carmen nodded. I told your sister that any changes to Emma's custody would require a formal review process and court approval. But Madison, she was very persistent. She kept mentioning that Emma wasn't legally related to your family, that they had no obligation to care for her long term. They're trying to get rid of her while I can't fight back. That's exactly what they're doing. Carmen's voice was steel. But here's what they don't understand. You have rights as Emma's legal mother. And more importantly, Emma has rights. I can remove her from their care immediately if there's evidence of emotional abuse or neglect. Please, I whispered. "Get her out of there." "I will, but I need you to be prepared for what comes next. Your family isn't going to take this well, and they might try to fight this legally." I thought about my parents' house, about the lawyers they'd always bragged about having on retainer, about their connections in the community. Then I thought about Emma's terrified eyes during her last visit. "I don't care what they do to me," I said. "Just protect my daughter." Carmen squeezed my hand. "There's something else you should know. I did some checking after your sister's call. Did you know that your parents have been telling people around town that Emma is just a temporary placement? That you're trying out motherhood before deciding whether to keep her?" The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain from the accident. "They've been sabotaging us from the beginning." "It appears so, but Madison, here's what they don't know. Emma's not going anywhere. You're her legal mother, you've provided excellent care, and there's absolutely no grounds for removal. What they're doing is harassment and possibly emotional abuse of a minor." That evening, Carmen returned with Emma. My little girl ran to my hospital bed with tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, they said you might not want me anymore. They said I was too much trouble and you might send me back." I held her as tightly as my broken ribs would allow. "Baby, listen to me very carefully. You are my daughter, forever and always. No one can send you back anywhere because you're not going anywhere. This is your home with me, and that will never change. Promise? I promise with my whole heart." Carmen had arranged for Emma to stay with my friend Lisa, another single mum who had kids Emma's age. It wasn't ideal, but it was safe. And Emma knew Lisa well from our mommy group play dates. "What about Grandma and Grandpa?" Emma asked as Carmen prepared to take her to Lisa's house. "They made some bad choices, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt people we love. But that's not your fault, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you." Emma nodded solemnly, processing this with the gravity that children who've experienced trauma often possess. "Are we still a family? Just us?" "We are absolutely still a family. The best family." After they left, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to my lawyer, Patricia Johnson. Patricia was a family law attorney I'd used during Emma's adoption, a sharp woman in her early 60s who specialised in child advocacy cases. When I explained the situation, her response was immediate and decisive. "Madison, what they're doing could constitute child endangerment and harassment. We need to document everything and consider our legal options." "What kind of legal options?" "Well, for starters, we can pursue a restraining order to keep them from interfering with your parental rights. But there's something else you might want to consider. Didn't you mention during the adoption process that your parents were pressuring you about inheritance issues?" I had forgotten about that conversation. 2 years ago, during the home study process, Patricia had asked about family support systems. I'd mentioned how my parents kept bringing up their will, how they'd always said their assets would go to their children's children, their real grandchildren. "They've made it clear Emma doesn't count as a real grandchild," I said. "Interesting, because I seem to recall you mentioning that you'd been named as executor of their estate, and that there was a substantial life insurance policy with you as the beneficiary." It was true. My parents had always been financially comfortable. My father had built a successful construction company, and my mother had inherited money from her family. They'd named me as executor years ago, back when Sarah was going through her divorce, and they didn't trust her judgment with money. What are you thinking, Patricia? I'm thinking it's time your family understood that their actions have consequences. How would you feel about making some changes to your own estate planning? The second call was to my financial advisor, Mark Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, as it turned out. I'd been working with Mark for 5 years, building my marketing business and making smart investments. What my family didn't know was that my business had been incredibly successful. The contracts I'd been working such long hours to secure had paid off in a big way. Mark, I need you to prepare a complete financial statement for me. Everything, business assets, investment accounts, real estate, life insurance. I need exact numbers. Is everything okay? I'm about to have a very important conversation with my family, and I want them to understand exactly what they're risking. The third call was the hardest. I dialed my parents' house, and my father answered. Madison, how are you feeling? Where's Emma? What do you mean? She's fine. Sarah took her to McDonald's with the boys. I knew he was lying. Carmen had picked Emma up hours ago. Dad, I need to talk to you, Mom and Sarah, tomorrow morning. Can you all come to the hospital? Of course, sweetheart. We've been so worried about you. The fake concern in his voice made my stomach turn. Good. And Dad? Bring Sarah. We need to have a family meeting. I spent that night wide awake, staring at the ceiling and planning what I would say. By morning, Patricia had arrived with a thick folder of documents, and Mark had prepared a complete financial overview that even surprised me. I'd been so focused on building security for Emma and me that I hadn't really calculated my total net worth. The number was substantial, over $500,000 in assets, with a business worth at least that much again. My family arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. Mom brought flowers and a concerned smile. Dad looked uncomfortable in his good shirt. He always dressed up for what he called serious conversations. Sarah came in complaining about having to find a babysitter for her boys, clearly annoyed to be there. How are you feeling, honey? Mom asked, arranging the flowers on my bedside table. I've been better, I said. Please, everyone sit down. I have some things I need to discuss with you. Patricia entered the room just as they were settling into chairs. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia Johnson, Madison's attorney. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Sarah looked immediately suspicious. Why do you need a lawyer, Madison? Because, I said calmly, we need to talk about Emma and about the future of this family. Dad cleared his throat. Now, Madison, we know you're upset about the little girl, but we were just trying to help. You're in no condition to make decisions about childcare right now. The little girl has a name, Dad. It's Emma. She's your granddaughter, and she's been terrorized by this family for the last week. Terrorized? Sarah scoffed. That's a little dramatic, don't you think? We fed her, housed her, took care of her while you were unconscious. A little gratitude might be nice. Patricia spoke up. Ms. Fletcher, are you aware that threatening to remove a child from their legal guardian constitutes harassment and potentially child endangerment? Sarah's face went pale. We didn't threaten anything. We were just discussing options. Options that included contacting social services to have Emma removed from Madison's custody, Patricia continued. Options that included telling a 6-year-old child that she would be sent back to an orphanage. Options that included undermining Madison's parental authority while she was incapacitated. Mum started crying. We were just trying to help. We don't know anything about raising adopted children. She's so different from our boys. Different how? I asked quietly. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Sarah exploded. You want to know the truth? Fine. She's not really our family, Madison. She's some stranger's kid that you decided to rescue because you couldn't get your life together enough to have your own children. We don't owe her anything. The mask was finally off. Patricia was taking notes, and I could see she was documenting every word. She doesn't fit in with our family, Sarah continued, her voice rising. She looks different. She acts different. She has all these issues from wherever she came from. The boys don't understand why they have to share their grandparents with some random kid you picked up. It's not fair to them. That's enough, Dad said, but it was too late. No, it's not enough. Sarah stood up, pacing now. You waltz in here with this damaged kid and expect us all to pretend she's family? You expect us to love her the same as our real grandchildren? It doesn't work that way, Madison. Blood matters. I looked at my parents. Is that how you feel too? Mum was still crying. Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't deny it. Their silence was answer enough. Okay, I said calmly. I'm glad we're finally being honest with each other. I nodded to Patricia, who opened her folder and pulled out several documents. Since we're talking about family and what we owe each other, let's discuss some facts, Patricia said. Madison, would you like me to explain your current financial situation to your family? Sarah looked confused. What does Madison's money have to do with anything? Patricia smiled. Well, it turns out Madison has been quite successful in recent years. Mark, would you like to share the numbers? Mark stepped forward. I hadn't seen him arrive, but Patricia had arranged for him to be there. Madison's total net worth, including her business assets, investment portfolio, real estate, and liquid assets, is approximately $1.2 million. The room went dead silent. You could hear the machines beeping in the hallway. That's impossible, Sarah whispered. She lives in that tiny apartment. Because I was saving money to buy Emma and me a house, I said, because I wanted to make sure she had college funds and security and everything she'd never had before. Dad found his voice first. Madison, honey, we had no idea you'd done so well for yourself. Of course you didn't. You were too busy telling everyone I was playing house and would fail as a mother. Patricia pulled out another document. There's more. Madison was named as executor of your parents' estate and as a beneficiary on several life insurance policies. The total value of those benefits is approximately $300,000. What are you getting at? Sarah asked, but I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. I'm getting at the fact that actions have consequences, I said. Patricia, please share the changes I'm making to my estate planning. Patricia pulled out a thick legal document. As of this morning, Madison has updated her will and all beneficiary designations. Her parents have been removed as emergency guardians for Emma, and they've been removed as beneficiaries on all accounts. Mum gasped. Madison, you can't be serious. Her sister Sarah has also been removed from all inheritance considerations, Patricia continued. Madison's entire estate will now go to Emma, with a trust established to provide for her care until she reaches majority. You're punishing us for trying to help you, Dad said, his voice rising. No, I said, I'm protecting my daughter from people who see her as disposable. Sarah stood up abruptly. This is insane. You can't cut us out over one conversation. One conversation? I looked at her incredulously. Sarah, you called social services to try to have my daughter removed from my custody while I was unconscious in the hospital. You told a 6-year-old child that she would be sent away to make room for real children. You've spent 2 years making it clear that Emma isn't welcome in this family. That's not what happened, Mom protested. Patricia pulled out her phone. Actually, we have a recorded statement from Emma's social worker detailing Sarah's phone call, as well as witness testimony from Mrs. Chen regarding the conversation she overheard in your backyard. Dad stood up, his face red. You're being manipulated, Madison. That lawyer is filling your head with nonsense to get her fees paid. Actually, Patricia said smoothly, I'm working pro bono on this case. Child advocacy is something I believe in strongly. I looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's going to happen. Emma and I are going to move out of state once I'm recovered. We're going to build a life somewhere that she feels wanted and loved. You will have no contact with either of us unless Emma specifically requests it when she's old enough to make that decision. You can't keep our granddaughter from us, Mom sobbed. Emma is not your granddaughter, I said quietly. You made that very clear. She's my daughter, and I'm protecting her from people who would hurt her. Sarah's face twisted with rage. Fine. Take your little pet project and leave. See how long it lasts when reality sets in and you realise what you've gotten yourself into. I've been Emma's mother for 2 years, Sarah. Reality already set in. It's wonderful. Dad tried one last time. Madison, we can work this out. We're family. I shook my head. No, we're not. Family doesn't threaten to abandon children. Family doesn't manipulate and scheme behind each other's backs. Family doesn't make 6-year-olds cry themselves to sleep wondering if they're going to be thrown away again. Patricia handed them each a document. These are cease and desist orders. You are not to contact Madison or Emma directly or indirectly. Any violations will result in restraining orders and potential criminal charges. They left without another word, Mom still crying, Dad stony-faced, Sarah muttering about ingratitude and manipulation. After they were gone, I called Emma at Lisa's house. Mommy, how did the meeting go? It went perfectly, baby. We're going to be just fine. Are Grandma and Grandpa still mad at us? They're not part of our family anymore, sweetheart. But that's okay, because our family is perfect exactly as it is. Just you and me forever and always. When I hung up, Patricia smiled at me. How do you feel? Free, I said, for the first time in my life, completely free. 3 weeks later, Emma and I moved to Colorado, where I'd been offered an amazing position with a marketing firm in Denver. Emma started first grade at a school where no one knew our history, where she was just another beloved little girl with a mum who adored her. On our first night in our new house, a real house with Emma's own room and a backyard with a swing set, Emma curled up next to me on the couch. Mommy, are you my real mommy now? I pulled her close. Baby, I've always been your real mommy. From the moment I first held you, you were mine and I was yours. Nothing will ever change that." She smiled and closed her eyes. "Good. I love our family." "I love our family too, sweetheart, just you and me." Have you ever had to protect your child from your own family? Have you ever realized that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones causing the most harm? Share your story in the comments below, because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose our children's well-being over family expectations. Our family of 2 is perfect, and Emma will never again have to wonder if she's wanted or loved, because she is completely and forever